I'm Taylor.
And we are going to talk about a few things for Man versus Tech. And the camera needs to sit still. We've got a new setup here. We've been on hiatus. You haven't seen myself, Taylor, Chris, any of the other guests that we've had since about Thanksgiving time. We went on a little bit longer hiatus than expected, but we're back. Going to be here every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Check us out on LinkedIn and YouTube. Those are the best places to check it out. But got a little bit of a new setup from a technical perspective. So we may have some kinks to work out there. You ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Are you ready? You viewer, ready? Okay.
Got some good topics this week.
Good stuff. So let's start with a fun piece of news. You know, this is a different definition of fun, maybe. We're going to go. This happened a few weeks ago. The people were talking all about this. Software engineer allegedly stole $300,000 from Zulily, and they were inspired by Office Space.
Yes.
Now you've seen Office Space.
I have.
Right? Office Space is one of those things like waiting for the restaurant industry is kind of required viewing. Office Space for desk jobs required viewing. And so 90s movie.
Yes.
Right? Early 2000s maybe. I think it was 90s though.
It's a classic.
It's a classic.
Yes.
Vintage. And
no, I think you're vintage. It's classic.
It's classic. I'm an antique by this point. And so, there is a developer who even had a folder on his computer called Office Space Scam or something like that.
The confidence.
Yes. And basically he pulled some hijinks to take the shipping fees. And he was a programmer for Zulily. It even says here, 1999 film. So still squeezed in into the 90s. So if I understand the actual shenanigans properly, he basically inserted some code in between the purchase point and the recording in the database to divert funds that were paid for shipping to a different account, and then try to insert, hey, this is free shipping before it gets to the database. And that way he collects money from the purchaser that's supposed to go to the company, but the company doesn't know that they were supposed to receive shipping. That's how I understand it. Could be wrong. Put an asterisk on that.
It's a pretty good bad idea.
It's pretty good at it. And then also, because of their programming position, would change the price on some items and then buy them and then change the price back. And then they could go sell those things on the secondary market. Again, to the tune of about $260,000 in payments by diverting shipping fees, and then about $40,000 in products.
It's a lot. This is a large operation.
Yes. And so this person, and it ran for less than a year. So, not $300,000 in one day like the Office Space guys, but in 11 months.
It's fairly prolific.
Yeah, pretty good. And then also double charging some people. So double charging. So the diverting of funds, double charging people, and price changes. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't do it.
So where do you go wrong?
Where do you go wrong? Well, that's a funny thing.
So it lasted for almost a year, so they didn't know.
They didn't know, or they waited for it to be big enough to really pull out of the guy.
Interesting.
That could be it. He was actually put on the team to figure out what happened. That's how much they didn't know that it was him, or how sadistic they are. But I'm going to go with that they didn't know, right? Don't attribute to malice what could be attributed to ignorance.
Of course.
So I think they just didn't know. Where did he go wrong? I think stealing. I think that one, if there were 10 rules to live by in life, not stealing is one of them.
Of course.
But yeah. So how to get caught though,
yes.
Right? That's why everybody watches America's Most Wanted so that they could see, okay, if I were going to do this, how do I? I'm just joking. That's not why we watch it. I probably
Like, was
the
he
fact,
rounding up too much, or?
well, a big company like this should have rules in place to see, like, hey, this thing is coming through as free shipping, doesn't meet the free shipping requirements. It should have a second validation to see, like, oh, should that have happened? And if that flag gets kicked enough, they look into it. Or if it gets kicked at all, they look into it, I know someone who's a forensic accountant at a large oil company, and he will spend months tracking down dollars. And sometimes it seems really futile. And sometimes tracking down dollar amounts that are less, or money amounts that are less than $1 in discrepancies actually lead to six-figure fraud, or six-figure issues. I shouldn't just say fraud, but issues.
So it seems like he didn't realize there might be some other part of the kind of back end of their operations that he wasn't aware of.
That, or even just just a quarterly report, even, or an annual report. And maybe that's why it went off for so long, because they didn't notice it till the annual report. And they're like, hey, last year we got paid an average of X number of dollars per item shipped. This year we got Y, which is way lower than X. What happened?
Why?
Statistically significant differences. And that's what tripped him. I don't know exactly what tripped him up.
I really hope they knew that he did it before they put him on the team to go find who did it.
They're just like, we're gonna make this guy sweat.
Yeah,
that's
like, don't let him review his portion of code. Like, we know what he wrote. Give that to like his best friend.
Oh man, yeah. So Taylor, the tech sadist here. All right, well, good stuff. So another item that has been in the news a lot lately, ChatGPT.
All over the news.
What is ChatGPT?
So it's like a chat bot in a way. For what it does, it's quite sophisticated, or for what it is, rather. But basically, you give it a prompt and kind of like what you want it to do, and it creates like an output from that. So if you tell it, write me a short story about this character doing this thing with this ending, it'll write what it thinks is a story that contains those elements. Okay,
very cool. And so ChatGPT is an iteration of GPT-3, third generation of the GPT, or general. I'm blanking on the acronym now, but OpenAI are the people that created it, right? And GPT-3 is the current iteration. ChatGPT is a version of that, maybe like a 3.5. We call it that. And I found this came up in my newsfeed, and I thought this was a really interesting thing to keep in mind. And I want to show this at the beginning rather than the end, just because I think it'll land some punch here. So OpenAI CEO says, unfortunately, people will be disappointed with GPT-4. So there's been a lot of news out there about GPT-3, ChatGPT, GPT-4, the next generation. It's going to be even better, right?
And in case you were curious, GPT stands for Generative Pre-training Transformer, which is more confusing than just saying GPT.
Thank you very much. And so here's Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman. The hype is just like, we don't have an actual artificial intelligence, as implied, and that's sort of what's expected of us. In that it doesn't have something that can match the creativity of a person, right? It's been trained on what other people have done.
Oh yeah.
And it creates novel info, creates novel writing, but it doesn't create new writing.
Yes,
right?
It needs a prompt, and then it needs stuff to reference from.
Right.
It can't have like these eureka moments where it just creates something out of thin air.
Right. Like at some point, C.S. Lewis sat down and created the Chronicles of Narnia. Tolkien created the Lord of the Rings. Is it Hubert or Herbert? Frank Herbert did, created Dune. George Lucas made not the sci-fi film he wanted to and came up with Star Wars. Because so he did borrow from a lot of stuff. But as you can tell, I love Star Wars. So you do have people that borrowed from things, but when you look at kind of these earlier pioneers, maybe Poul Anderson, you want to go with the first sci-fi, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yeah.
No one had come up with anything like that. Like the only thing she could have borrowed from were like romance novels. Like, so it was very different at the time.
So one could argue that maybe all those ideas were borrowed or took inspiration from real life experiences, which ChatGPT and similar programs really can't get at the moment.
And so, yeah, you can do that because you have stuff like Tolkien, right? Took a lot of inspiration from Norse mythology and English folklore and that kind of thing. I don't know what inspiration Mary Shelley would have had for Frankenstein.
Could have been just kind of, because when you think about like inspiration for like horror movies or horror stories in general, usually it's based on, actual real life scary things. You've seen death, you've seen back then, I'm sure, very terrible doctor situations. So you see a lot of like just terrible stuff in the medical field. Yeah.
Plus it's the Age of Enlightenment. They're beginning to understand electricity a little bit more. And she gets this idea. What if you could reanimate a body made out of multiple corpses?
Of course.
Right. But ChatGPT isn't creative like that, right? It's not that kind of artificial intelligence.
Yes.
It's a word generator.
Yeah.
I mean,
really insanely good word generator.
Yeah, it's awesome. I saw one thing that I thought was interesting. I don't have it pulled up here, but it said ChatGPT passes Wharton Business Review. So like it took like a college level finals class or test and passed it.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, well, that's amazing.
It is.
But when you get into the details, you start understanding Altman's statement a little bit better, right? Because it didn't just take the test and pass it. It took the test. Every time it got a wrong answer, it got retrained. It got given hints on, oh no, think about it this way. And it got to try the questions multiple times. And I said, you know what? I bet if you took any sufficiently knowledgeable person, not even a business major, but just your average, United States adult, though any other country would probably qualify, but we're in the United States. So we'll go with, you take your average United States adult and you ask them the questions. And if every time they got a wrong answer, you gave them hints, I bet they would be pretty darn good at it too. And they could get what this said, that it would have gotten a B or a B minus.
And the key is at that one test.
Yeah.
You switch around the answer or you switch around the questions, reword them, completely different.
It might have trouble at that point. But also if it's taking the first test and you switch around the wording and the questions, it might do better the second time because it now has more stuff that it's been trained on.
That is true.
And so it is generalized intelligence, right?
Yes.
And so the G, right? So it's supposed to be good at lots of different things. People will take the GPT platforms and they'll create custom versions of them that are more focused. Like, I've seen ones that are business idea generators. And so they've put in parameters to really focus on business ideas. Some of the ideas seem terrible playing around with it. But yeah, any other thoughts? Sorry, I've been talking too much.
We were talking before this, and we're talking about, I've seen a lot of news about it being able to kind of write code. An example, I've been hearing that it could write it like good examples of code. Turns out it's just kind of okay at best, but it's still the very start. And I've always heard that when you start out with, like, when you have an AI that can kind of write to them. It's kind of the beginning of the end, or the kind of lead up to the quote unquote singularity.
Yes, when you have a program that can write other programs, it's the last program that you need.
Yeah, and so I do feel like we've long ago began the journey, but we're like clearly we are on that path now.
Yes, and so on that note, let's take a look at it.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm sorry, I have to adjust again. This new setup, I've got kind of a camera right in the middle of the screen here.
It's a feature, not a bug.
All right. So while that's going, let's switch over to. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes. So I'm going to get logged in here to Playground. And it took too long on the images. I was going to show some of these images, but they look a little different. Now, one thing I noticed is on CAPTCHA and recap any looking photo, right? And that actually has to do with AI, so that AI can't see what's in the photo, because there's certain things you can do to a photo that really mess with AI.
Just changing the bit mapping a bit.
Yeah, just get a little bit of some tint and just really interesting stuff, in my opinion. All right, so I'm going to get logged in, and I have Visual Studio Code logged in or loaded on this machine, and we'll use it just to kind of see this. So here, tell people what Visual Studio Code is.
Visual Studio Code is kind of a lightweight code editing environment. It's not quite a full-blown IDE. You can make it like a full-blown IDE, but mainly you use it to write, the only thing I've really used it for is Python scripting and kind of editing HTML, just kind of like individual files. You can use it to edit full-blown projects. So you could write a C#.NET application in it. Has really robust IntelliSense, which basically is like code completion, kind of like word completion, but way better because it gives a description of the thing that you're about to complete, which is amazing. Yeah, it's just a lighter weight version of Visual Studio, which is the full-blown like development environment, where it has, you can publish stuff from there. You can download NuGet packages, which I believe you can do in Visual Studio Code. I have not done that. I do all my development in Visual Studio, but yeah,
All right,
lightweight code editor.
No, good stuff. Good stuff. So it took me a minute to log in because I had to try several times here because so many people are hitting this thing. It's not always available.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so this is the GPT playground using GPT-3, which isn't quite the same as ChatGPT, but that's even more limited access than GPT-3, the root of, at this time. And so you can write a prompt to it, and then it'll create something. So there's some cool things.
You get to choose a model.
You can. There are a lot of options
Code
here. So we're going to. Let's see. So we'll do some stuff. So let's say we do a lot with oil and gas.
Yes.
Right. Right. Gotta spell things correctly. Actually, you don't. I have played with this. I've misspelled things and did a pretty good job. Right.
Impressive.
And oil and gas and easement agreement. All right. We'll submit that, and it'll start writing an agreement. So this is an agreement made on this date between this party and that party, certain property located in, blah, 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 desired to construct. And basically it's creating that contract.
That's mind blowing.
It is. I mean, it's really cool. And so what
and
it's done,
really good.
It's seen a lot of these contracts. You'll see it stopped here, right?
Yes.
During the playground, it does that. But if you hit submit again, it'll just keep going.
And you do have a maximum length setting over there.
That is true. That is true. I could make it longer. Let's make that 3,000. That's not letting me type in there. So this is basically just the default settings. You could make more fine tuning each time, and you get a contract. And this looks like a contract.
Yes.
Now, when you get into this wording, it's actually pretty simple, right? Indemnification. Grantee shall indemnify and hold harmless grantor from any and all claims, losses, damages, costs, and expenses, including attorney's fees arising from the construction, operation, maintenance, or repair of the pipeline. That is an indemnification clause. It's a pretty simple one.
But it makes sense.
But it does. It makes sense. And that's one thing that I think is a big advantage over GPT-2. When people saw it, they were like, this is a fever dream.
Yes. Kind of like the image generation version of Chat GPT.
Yes. And so like I saw people made a short film. They had GPT-2 write a short sci-fi romance film. And I forget who all was in it, but it had like real actors in it. And it was less than 10 minutes. And you're like, okay, these are all English words, but they weren't all like real sentences, and it was a bit hard to follow. But people have created screenplays with GPT-3 and Chat GPT, and they seem pretty legit.
Yeah.
So there's that. So we have this agreement here, right? And I gave it a really broad parameter. So let's get a little more technical with it, and we'll use, let's see, create a contact manage system. And see. Let's see how that goes. Submit. Right, reached. Okay. All right. Let's go with this. So using a different model. That model I couldn't use. It's not bad.
Not at all.
So it's not.
It's making the classes.
Right.
So
it's making the classes.
The objects.
And it actually will declare things, right? It does a pretty good job. I will say, in my experience, it's not perfect. I was playing around with this a lot last week and gave it a few different program prompts. I wouldn't expect it to be perfect.
Oh no,
it's impressive. I think now would be a good time for us to say, why should this or should this not scare people? But before we do, I'm going to hit submit again and see if it does the thing that I think it's going to do that I think is pretty cool. There it is. This model predicted that it is done with the task. So it didn't just stop because it ran out of characters or anything. Like, it thinks it finished the job, which I just think that's pretty cool. So why should we be scared or should we not be scared about Chat GPT?
Why we should be scared? It depends on who needs to be scared.
Okay. Who should be scared?
Well, from my standpoint, what I just saw, software engineers, maybe not engineers, software developers for sure.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty wild.
It's a bit unnerving, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people talking about that marketing professionals, copywriters, people that create content for websites and blog posts and press releases are not going to be necessary anymore. I don't think that's true, though.
At least for the next 15, 20 years.
Even then. But yeah, I mean, this isn't taking over today.
No.
Right. I actually personally would love for it to take over, and we'll get to that in a little bit. We're already at 11:30. You okay going longer?
Of course.
We started a little late. We'll go a little long. All right.
We have taken a long hiatus.
We
so
have
gotta
taken a
make
lot.
up
We
for
got a
it.
lot to say. A lot to say, and this is a big topic.
Yeah.
And not that we're going to talk about all of it today, but I think that being scared of general intelligence, general artificial intelligence, is a pretty important topic.
Oh, of course.
All right, so we got software developers,
Mhm.
we got marketing content professionals.
Mhm.
I don't know who else, maybe speech writers.
Yes.
Speech writers. All right, so we've got all that. People that might be feeling some apprehension
Mhm.
about this. So let's look at those three groups one at a time. Let's start with the speechwriter. I have some ideas on why I think a speechwriter shouldn't be scared of this. What do you think? Do you have any ideas?
Why they should or shouldn't be?
Should
scared?
not be. I think the reason they quote unquote should be scared is because this thing could write a speech. I mean, if you were like, write a speech similar to the Gettysburg, don't know if I spelled that right, address, but about inflation. That's a big topic, right? Submit that.
Wow.
So it's going to write a speech.
But I will say the content is not the most important part about a speech.
Exactly. The content's not the most important part about a speech. The way it's delivered, it's important.
Well,
and
who's delivering it?
That is the sources. Got to consider the source. I also think the big thing that looks like it aired out due to a network issue here. We'll have it keep going. I think a big thing that this can't do is it doesn't understand people.
Yes.
And we have seen, sorry there, bumping you. We have seen so many times politicians sink and swim, so to speak, based on how they can relate to people.
Oh, of course.
This thing doesn't relate to people.
Interesting.
And so does this speech, which is definitely a speech in the style of the Gettysburg Address, just for fun flavor, does it actually make people feel better? Does it quell any fears if somebody were to hear the president or their preferred politician give this speech? I don't know that it would, and not just because of the old style language, but I'm just not sure that it can really deliver something that people relate to, because it's based off of all these other examples. And one thing we've seen is that society moves pretty fast.
So the thing that would make a speechwriter irrelevant is putting "thank you" dash a real person's name at the bottom. You would never be able to know that was written by a bot.
So yeah, if you did give it credit as a fake person, you wouldn't know that a bot wrote it. But I think that the quality wouldn't be there. So one thing that I think we are going to see is I think we're going to see kind of three levels of usage. We're going to see people that opt for, my apologies if this is offensive to anyone, mediocre output that is purely AI generated.
Okay.
All right. And for them, it's good enough. You know what? It's 70%, it's 80%. That's fine. It's not worth the extra cost. That's good enough. Go with it. Then you're going to see professionals that want to kind of keep a foot in both worlds, that offer augmenting of AI, that say, hey, you know what I do is I create a TV script or play or speech or whatever it is. And I take what the AI generates and I make it better. I tweak it because, it gets you 70, 80% of the way there. I bring it across the finish line.
You give the human touch to it.
Yes, you give the human touch to it. And so for me, this is kind of like the manufacturing process, right?
Yeah.
If you've got something, if you've got a plastic chair that is made 100% by robots in a factory, okay, that's good enough for a lot of things. You have a chair like this one here that I'm in. It's got wood parts, it's got cushion parts, it's got metal parts, it's got plastic parts. It's an amalgam. A human was involved in this chair, and this is a better chair than maybe just a cheap plastic folding chair.
Oh yeah,
right. But there's a third level. The people that want the Ron Swanson handcrafted wood furniture.
Oh yeah.
And so I do think that there will always be at least a niche place for artisanal speech writing, for lack of a better term. The people that will 100% from a human's brain write a speech, write marketing content, write whatever. That may be a much smaller percentage than people who are currently doing that job.
Yeah.
But I think those people will also be able to demand a premium in the pricing, just like...
Of course, they're hand doing this from scratch.
Well, just like handcrafted furniture, right? Something handcrafted costs more than your IKEA bookshelf.
That's true.
Actually, I don't know if you have IKEA bookshelves. More than my IKEA bookshelves. I got a lot of IKEA bookshelves.
I love IKEA.
Yeah. And you know, IKEA does some really good stuff,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
But you also have to assemble it, right?
Yes.
You're the human component in there.
Mm-hmm.
I know there have been plenty of bookshelves that I've bought off the shelf at Walmart that fall apart whenever, you know, they don't survive a single move. I can install them. I can, you know, put them in one place. I put the bookshelves on them. It works.
Oh yeah.
But then if I need help carrying that to a different place, it's not going to survive the trip for one reason or another.
Yeah.
So I think there's that for the playwrights.
Well, and when it comes to the code writing,
yeah,
the first thought I had when I saw that, because I have not seen it actually do it. I've seen the end results that people posted, and I was like, "Oh, that's crazy!" But seeing it actually do it, you could, I guess, try and write an entire program from this. But I think the big, great thing about this is that, yeah, I could go to Stack Overflow to get my answers, or I could be like, I'm having trouble with writing this one type of method, and I wish that it could help get me started on like a way to do it.
Yeah.
So like if I'm having trouble creating like this crazy like post method that like connects to SQL and then it has to send an email and does a whole bunch of stuff, if it could just kind of help me along, that would be really cool. Because like maybe I've been searching Google for the last hour and there's like barely any links. It would really help a lot.
Yeah.
So basically it's kind of like you can search Google and then you can try and search this, see if maybe it's got some insights, because it can look at pretty much everything you'd be able to see on Google, but also kind of infer some things.
It should be adhering to some best practices.
Oh yeah.
Right. So it's writing its thing. Looks like it finished.
And
one thing that I think is funny is I didn't tell it C# that time.
And it wrote C#.
But I did specify SQL Server, which is a Microsoft product, and the .NET family languages do, have the best relationship with SQL Server.
Visual Basic, because it's been around longer, so there's more documentation.
That is true, but I think just in general, using Visual Basic is not best practices.
That's true.
Sorry, VB.
So why not like
VB6,
Java or?
Well, maybe if we
Python?
used a different database, it might have, like, what if we used PostgreSQL?
Also, how do they determine like your tokens? Because I know when you're the DALL-E one, you get a certain amount of tokens, and you have to buy some more.
Yeah.
How does this work?
That's a great. You do have to pay. Right now, I'm in the Playground, which has some limited functionality, limits to it, but they do have a purchasable version for access to it. It's based on the amount of time that it runs for. At least for GPT-3. I did see something about a Chat GPT where you could subscribe for a monthly amount, and get either X number of prompts or some sort of usage out of it. So you get that. So here's why I think developers shouldn't be scared. As the person who writes this prompt, and maybe this will illustrate it better. What if I say write a WinForm UI for contact list data entry. That's something I walk in and say.
Yeah,
sure, we'll go with that. You don't get to decide where everything is. You don't decide how big text boxes are. You don't decide what's a button and what's a checkbox, what's a drop down. So there's a lot less control over it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it can do really cool things. And I love your idea of maybe use this as a reference. Like, I'm kind of stuck. What are some ideas? Help me think outside the box.
Like, what are the different ways? This might give me a novel way of thinking about this problem.
Yeah. Which you can also tell it, give me a different answer down here. That's what these buttons are for. This is the give me a different answer button that you can do. So there's that. But I also think this would possibly give rise to a new job. People that are prompt writers.
Oh, yeah.
I think that we will see prompt writer as a profession the next decade.
I will say, if you're a prompt writer that's making programs, you'll need to be a programmer because you'll need to understand what goes into making this program at least a little bit.
Yeah.
If not a lot, because then you got to check. You're not delivering garbage.
I just want to create a new file. Yep, sure. Create file. All right, so we paste that in here. I mean, it's color coded. That's first time running.
Baby's first program.
That's right. It doesn't show any errors here, but we may have to. Do we have to run before we get to the errors?
C#.
Okay. So, but right off the bat, I mean, it looks good, right? It didn't finish. It didn't finish. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Errors. So, there you go. Yeah. So there it is, though. I know that shouldn't be there. But let's head back.
And you could write an even simpler program.
Oh, and you know what? Actually, hold on. Let's keep going with this. Let it finish. So one thing we didn't do is I did not just show Visual Studio Code like I should have. Still showing ChatGPT here. So we'll switch over. It's still writing. Man, this is what programmers get paid to do.
Yes.
All this stuff. But I'm just saying you don't have any control over it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I think there will always be a need for someone. And then what about revisions?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you want control over it, like that button's too big.
Yeah. That button's too big. That box is too small. I don't like this font. That's all things, right? Especially aesthetically. But let's say you create, even if it's a console application, you create an application and it does A, B, C. And somebody comes along like, I really like that to do D. I need to do A, B, C, D. Can this thing, would it have to create a whole new application? Can it modify the existing application? What are the implications of that? All right, so here we go. We've got a full application here. It says it's done. Let's switch screens. We're gonna switch over to Visual Studio Code. Let's share this, bring this up, paste the whole thing in here.
And then you'll need to comment out the top.
Yeah, I just want to see. You know what? Let's even just delete it. We won't even get fancy with it. Run without debugging. What do we get? Nope, that's not going to work. Start debugging. I feel like this is like when you start running and you trip on your shoelace immediately.
Yeah. Or your legs just don't work. And you're like, well, that's weird.
Yeah.
We were just working a second ago.
So let's see. Oh, that's installed.
We might need to name it to ASDF.cs. I should know.
Wait, which one?
Top one.
Top one. Explore.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's not running, unfortunately.
Outline.
Okay, let's try this. New file. That did not help. Well, that's too bad. I just wanted to see how many errors, if it found any syntactical errors.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not right. I mean, it generated quite a few lines, 108 lines of code. I mean, it's good.
You could remote into my computer and use Visual Studio.
Oh no, it'll be okay. We don't have to get that intense with it. Maybe in a future episode of Man vs. Tech. But I think that this is going to be one of those things where we do see people pitted against AI.
Oh yeah.
I think that they very well. I mean, I've seen news articles. Take it with a grain of salt. With this student had Chat GPT write their thesis, write their dissertation paper for this class. So we're going to have some human versus robot situations here. But I think eventually I want the robots doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right? The reason you can have the life they have in Star Trek is because people aren't worrying about survival.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They've got the food processors, they've got protein resequencers, they got all these fancy things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is part of that evolution where we get started moving towards that kind of technology, and there will be some growing pains with it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I think that just like, with the assembly line came the layoff of many factory workers, but also came some new jobs and a new level of production. It dropped the price of cars so much the average person could start buying cars. Now we've got this. I don't know what it's going to affect in the same way, other than there will probably be some augmentation to the job market as a result.
New careers. There's probably going to be new careers created around this.
Yeah. New careers created around this. Existing careers modified by it, and some careers outmoded.
Yeah.
Right. There will be some things that are just outmoded, and then you will have a niche legacy group of people that
artisans
do it. Yeah. That like I said, that
and then
artisan speechwriting.
We will eventually call them Amish 2.0.
And that's maybe. Maybe we'll see. So here we'll close that. We have entered the screen sharing version of Inception. So yeah, well that was fun.
Yeah,
that's interesting stuff. Let's see. We do have some chats here. Sorry for not paying better attention to the chat.
That's a good.
So Scott Casso, I think Frankenstein came from old Haitian zombie folklore, just for reference. Can you prompt it to be more personable?
Yeah.
So Scott, great idea. I was also thinking maybe zombie for Frankenstein, but not sure there. Prompt to be more personable. Let's come in here and let's switch over to this and let's ask it. Give me instructions on walking a dog. Okay, please give me instructions on walking a dog. Let's submit that.
To stop and sniff.
You got to let them do it. Keep the dog away from other animals. All right, so we got our little 10 steps on how to walk dog. Please and be personable about it. Let's see. We'll say, kindly give me gentle instructions on walking a dog. I don't know.
Respectfully.
There we go. We'll just kind of load it up. Some keyword stuff in there. Oh, okay.
Completion that begins with a stop sequence. Oh.
Gotta delete the old answer, put in the new one.
Clearly. Your pup. Oh.
So this is being a lot more personable. Everything, here's what I find the most interesting about it: the white space.
That
Instead
is
of
strange.
1, 2, 3, it added spacing in
It's like a
there,
list.
which helps with readability. It's fewer steps. All right, it's combined some things. Keep your pup on a short leash as to not let them wander away and get lost. It is.
It's a good list.
It's a good list, and I feel like it met the criteria.
I don't think it was kind enough.
Not kind enough. So, thank you, Scott. Let's see. How do I respond to Scott here? All right. So that's GPT, Chat GPT, GPT-3. A little bit of fun stuff. We'll see what the future holds.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to spend all weekend messing around with it.
Yeah, it is. It's a media storm right now for it, which I think the CEO is right to be a little wary of.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want any false expectations. But I also think that we need to keep in mind that, okay, this isn't really doing anything we need it to today.
Oh yeah.
But it will be a building block for something in the future, whether that's 10 years or 100 years from now. That's going to be pretty awesome.
It's going to be the building block of a lot of different things.
I think you're right.
I think right now we just need to be like, what is this thing? How does it work?
Mm-hmm.
And be like, okay, let's start thinking of ideas on how to make our lives as humans better from it.
How can we use this for good?
Yeah.
All right. Well, good stuff. I'm Kyle.
I'm Taylor.
And this has been Man vs. Tech. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
We look